Welcome to everybody who is joining us. Today is a Brent for Business webinar, and I would like to welcome our little panel of experts who are here today to help us determine how best to provide support, advice and guidance as we start to return to normality. We'll just give it a few more minutes before anyone else is going to come into the room, just to make sure we've got as many of you as here as possible before we get underway. I can still see you're still arriving. It's just like a real room. You watch people come in and squeeze into the seats at the back. So you're still coming in. We'll just give it a few more minutes and then we'll be able to get fully underway. I hope for all our delegates coming in that they are having a good and successful return to business. So welcome everybody. As our lockdown restrictions are starting to lift, we're going into a new world with lots of unanswered questions and experiences that we have never had to manage before as businesses, and indeed actually as shoppers and in our own personal lives as we go out and interact with businesses personally and professionally. So in this first of a series of free webinars, we are joined by our panelists to review the roadmap back to business, to help clarify any questions that you might have about it, to provide guidance about the rules and regulations, because as a business myself, I know they are confusing because there have been a lot of changes as we've tried to keep up with the constant changing environment. And we'll outline some of the steps that you need to follow to reopen safely. But mostly we are here to answer questions. And we are here to provide help, support and advice. And if we can't provide it within the webinar, we will hopefully be able to get in touch or make sure that you get that information afterwards. So can I introduce my panel today? I have Paul Harris, the Senior Enforcement Officer from Brent Council, Rubie Charalambous, Town Centre Manager for Wembley and Ealing Road, Marta Quiros, Programme Manager for Newable, and Jennie Horchover, owner of the HR department in Harrow and Hillingdon. So we've got a good range of people to ask all your questions. And as we now appear to have a nice number of people in our room, I'm going to hand over to Paul, who's going to start us off by telling us a little bit about that roadmap and how it's being approached. Paul, over to you. Paul, you're on mute, and I'm really hoping you're going to come on. And
yeah, thank you, Jo. I was just trying to unmute it there. Okay, thank you. Right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for that introduction, Jo, and thank you for coming along today. I'm just going to read out my introduction. I'm Paul Harris from Brent Council. In the past year, I've been involved in applying and explaining the various pieces of health protection legislation to Brent businesses. The government is seeking to ease the restrictions placed on businesses and the wider public, and it has set out a four-step process to remove restrictions, but will only move to fewer restrictions if it believes the pandemic is under control. And we are currently in step 2. And that means that general retail can operate. Certain businesses have to remain closed. Businesses that are licensed to serve food and drink can do so by takeaway or by, if they have the facilities, by allowing customers to sit down outside. Shops have to notify visitors that they must wear a face covering unless the person is exempt. And the simplest way to do this is by displaying a sign. Certain businesses, such as close contact and hospitality, have to download an NHS QR code so that visitors can check in using the NHS app. And those type of businesses must have a manual recording system for people who do not have the NHS app on their devices. When you are allowed to serve food and drink outside, you've got to adhere to an open air policy, which is 50% open, and you're limited to a group of 6 people sitting at a table, unless it's a family group or a linked household. There must be 2 metre gap between tables, unless there's mitigating factors such as back-to-back chairs. And this is in place at least until the 15th of May, when we may move to step 3, which will be slightly less restricted in the sense that there'll be indoor hospitality as well. So that's the basis of it. I'm going to post some links to general guidance on the roadmap, press releases on the roadmap, and sector-specific guidance for how to operate your business in a COVID-secure manner, because that's the outlines of the regulations. But of course, you have to do things like cleaning and making sure people have testing and stuff like that, which the other panelists will go from there. Okay, so if anybody has any specific questions about how the rules are applied to their business, I will hopefully be able to help them there. Okay, thank you.
I've done it myself. I've muted myself. Thank you very much, Paul. I'm going to go around our other panelists in turn, just so we can get a feel of what it's like there outside in the real world again, and also so they can introduce themselves. Rubie, would you like to come on first? Because I'd very much like you to introduce yourself and give us a feel for how busy it has been out there, actually on the streets. It's interesting to me because I've stayed pretty isolated, but I've been reading all those reports that initially thought people would be concerned about going back out, and also seeing the figures that some people have been seeing sales 40% ahead of where they were same time last year pre-pandemic. So clearly that pent-up demand is out there. So Rubie, could you come along and just tell us what it's been like actually on the front line?
Hi everyone, thanks for joining today. My name's Rubie Charalambous. I'm the Town Centre Manager for Wembley and Ealing Road. Been working for Brent for over 4 years, predominantly working with residents and businesses and really pushing businesses to understand what Shop Local is all about and using our local resources sustainably, employing local employers at decent wages and primarily serving the local community. It's been absolutely crazy in Wembley and Ealing Road. On Ealing Road, it appears like, Diwali's come early. The tills are ringing. People are actually eating street food. They are adhering, Paul, to the 2 metre distances as much as they can. And I can see that loads of people are now taking on board wearing masks when they're not eating. But TK Maxx has got a spiralling queue all along Wembley Central Square. Primark's queues going down St John's Road. I think people are just really excited just to get out of their front rooms and houses, just to kind of just get some sun and fresh air and see other people. When I was there only yesterday, people are just sat on benches, people watching. So there's this real excitement of just being part of the social community network of just looking and listening to what's going on in the community.
That's fantastic. I know that I was so impressed when I went out on day one. It was snowing and there were people actually queuing in the snow to get haircuts.
Yeah. So yeah, it's been really positive. I know from speaking to TK Maxx, like for like figures year on year are they're talking over 50% increase in retail daily sales on that particular day. So I know that the businesses have bounced back, and I actually did have that inkling that they would bounce back. Hairdressers and barbers that I've spoken to have got like a nice little queues waiting to actually just get their hair cut. So yeah, it's really positive.
That's great. And I'm going to hope that people continue to use their local shops going forward. We'll have a look at that later. Marta, can you come on next and tell us a little bit about yourself and about the support that Newable are able to offer businesses?
Well, yes, thank you. Thank you very much for having me, and welcome everyone to this panel. My name is Marta Quiros. I am program manager in Newable, but also program manager in the London Business Hub. And that's kind of the topic I really wanted to talk to you about today, because I think we have a lot of resources that can be useful for you and practical tools that you can use. I've been program manager for this program since last year, January. And obviously, when we started with our plans of a specific program, Pan-London program, that we're going to deliver with support face-to-face, different workshops all around London, and an accelerator that we're going to develop. And what happened, obviously, COVID came and we had to reshape and change all the program to adapt to businesses' need. So far we have helped around more than 2,000 unique companies that come through our program. So what I will encourage all of you, and I already put the link, is to join us and to book an appointment with any of our advisors. You are entitled to up to 12 hours of support with an advisor, and also to attend all the webinars that we are delivering each quarter. And also there is a program called the London Business Accelerator for companies who have the potential to grow. I will explain that later. But really the purpose of my participation is really give you the tools and tells you that we have 6 advisors dedicated to help you and go through all your individual cases. They will book a initial meeting with you, and then they can book subsequent meetings where you will receive information, diagnostic, and also brokerage support. So that's my
okay. So thank you very much. I know you're going to put several links in the chat so that people can access some of that support themselves and find out a little bit more about it. Jennie, I'm going to go over to you now. Hope that you can introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about some of the challenges that you've been helping businesses with over the past year and indeed going forward.
Thanks, Jo. Yeah, I'm Jennie Horchover. I run the HR department in the boroughs of Harrow and Hillingdon. There's no HR department licensee for the Brent area, so I'm one of your more local representatives, which is why I'm here. Certainly the last year and the last few weeks have been very busy with COVID-related HR, which is a very specific area I've had to learn about very quickly. The kind of questions that I've had coming in the last few weeks, and potentially some of the things that you might want to ask me today, are my wife's been shielding's ended, do I have to come back to work, or I'm concerned about coming back to work, what can I continue working from home? People putting in flexible working arrangements because they've got so used to working from home they rather like it and they don't want to come back into an office or a workplace. Somebody has a positive COVID test, does that mean I have to send all of my employees home? Nobody's taken annual leave for the last year because they've all been on furlough now, what do I do? So those are the kind of questions that I've been dealing with on a daily basis. And if you've got anything like that, then I'll be delighted to help you out either today or, if I can do so, then after this webinar.
That's excellent. Thank you very much. So all our delegates out there, I can see there's a number of you have now joined, which is fantastic. Be really grateful if you could put your questions in the Q&A and give us a chance to put it to our panel of experts, and we'll get you as many answers as we can. If we can't get you an answer now, we'll get you one later. But it would be lovely if you could put those questions in now. You can also speak live to the panel. So if you wanted to do that, you can raise a hand and I will try to bring you in vocally to talk to us so we can answer directly. Slightly more technically challenging, but it would be really nice to hear your voices as well, rather than have it all done by type. Just to kick us off now, I've got a really first question that I really wanted to ask, which is, I'm going to ask one of the questions. I've already got someone come in. So I've got Cheryl Tudor has come in, and she said, I've obtained a new shop, but it's got steep steps and disabled access is impossible. The landlord apparently is reluctant to allow changes. So that must be an interesting one. And I don't know if anybody is able to answer that question, not just, I suppose, in terms of disabled access, but in terms of the many businesses that must be experiencing equal challenges in getting themselves COVID secure, particularly people who suddenly find they need outdoor licenses and items like that. Where they previously would not have needed such things, and or social distancing queues outside their buildings. Paul, is it best if I come to you first to see if you're able to provide any guidance about where Cheryl can go for a bit more help?
Hello, Jo. Yes. I think that the best thing for that is because it's possibly a planning and licensing issue. What can if the attendee can send me the question, what type of business they are and where they are, the address. I will forward it on to planning or find out who the best placed person is to answer that question, and we'll deal with it in detail. Is that okay?
Yeah, so Cheryl, if you're listening in, just pop those details in the chat and we'll pick that up and Paul will follow it through for you. I've got another actually very good question here, which is kind of following on really, which is mostly about face masks. So I've got two questions about face masks, which is, can you refuse people who are not wearing a face mask? So what are the rules? And even if they're exempt, can you still say, I don't want them in the shop or I don't want them on my premises? Marta, you'd like to answer this one. Marta, can you come in on this one?
Sorry, I was on mute. I was going to put a comment because I have summaries of kind of guidance and not just specifically found the paragraph. So I think it would be helpful. I just put it there. And obviously, if you have any other comments about it, but I think in this one it's kind of self-explanatory. I think it might be better if I put it in the chat, right? Or
yeah,
for everyone to see.
Got specific guidance, pop it in there, because I think it's always nice for people to have the detail.
But I'm just gonna to answer that particular questions. So let me see if I done it correctly. Yeah. So since September, obviously the government is asking people. I'm reading what is the guideline says. The government is asking people to use homemade face coverings, and business will not be required to provide them. Establishments should not simply refuse entry to someone not wearing a face covering. Some people are exempt from wearing a face covering, and this should not be challenged. So that's kind of the answer to your question. Obviously you can refuse the entry to people, but if they are exempt and they can, I guess they mentioned that, or they prove that should be not questioned. And then what it says, as is usual practice, is that if a customer is acting antisocial or against the rule, staff will be able to call the police. Failure to comply with the law could lead to a 200 fine issued by the police. So I think it explains that difference. So I put the comment, I think you are mute.
Sorry, I'm muted there. Paul, would you like to come in on that one?
Yes, please. Yeah. Just thank you for that, Marta. The other elements of it are, from a business's point of view, just to reiterate, if you're a shop, you have to have a means of notifying people that they must wear a mask unless they're exempt. And the simplest way to do that is to have a sign saying you must wear a mask unless you're exempt, and stick that up in the window. So you are obliged to do that. That is the law. You are also obliged, as part of your COVID secure measures, to ensure that your staff are wearing masks when they're dealing with customers face to face and close up. I mean, in certain businesses like close contact businesses, you'd have to wear a face covering and further PPE measures to protect the person doing the cutting. So you have the face mask to protect the customer, and you have the PPE measures to protect the staff member. So you can't force people to wear masks, but you are obliged to ask them. But if they do say that they're exempt, as Marta says, you can't do anything about it. But you can always refuse to serve people if you want to. That's an ongoing, So, for example, if someone comes in and they're obnoxious or as a general or dangerous, you don't have to have them in the shop. So you could argue that applies to someone who refuses to wear a face mask. They're just as dangerous as someone doing something, threatening you or something like that. So obviously that's easier said than done, though. Okay, thank you.
So I like that answer. So yes, delegate, anonymous attendee who's asked that question, you are in control of what happens on your premises. So you are allowed to be assertive in terms of what happens on your premises. I've got a question quickly for Jennie, actually, which is I wanted to ask a little bit about working from home. And many businesses, particularly those that aren't retail, are still following government advice that they should work at home if at all possible. And what are the rules around supporting those employees with technical equipment and items like that? Because that's a tricky one, particularly for me as a business. So I thought I might as well get that one in now.
Yeah, absolutely. Certainly before COVID, if you were having people working from home, it would be your expectation that you would provide the equipment and contribute towards the cost of things like heating, electricity and all the rest of it. There's still obligations under health and safety in terms of risk assessments, making sure that they've got the right chair, all that kind of stuff. Obviously, when the pandemic first hit, everybody almost ran from the offices to home. There wasn't enough time for businesses to sort out who'd got what equipment. People ended up, sitting on their kitchen table, balancing a laptop on a pile of books when they were doing their webinars and all that kind of thing. And I know, yes, certainly an awful lot of my companies, the employees have, most employees do have most of the technology. Most of them have some kind of computer or something to be able to do that. If they don't, then absolutely it is the employer's responsibility to be able to provide the tools that employee needs to be able to do their job. Where it gets blurry, of course, is the difference between temporary and permanent working from home. And this was temporary, and then it goes on for a year, 18 months. It
was very long temporary, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I think what we're seeing now is more people that will ask formally so there's flexible working legislation where somebody could put in a request, and that could include working from home. That doesn't mean the business has to say yes, and there can be a number of reasons. The government website has a list of, I think, 8 different reasons why a business could justify where it's not going to work for them, but there's a process you have to go through. If you then have a permanent change to somebody's employment contract and they are a permanent home worker, then that would absolutely be the point where all the things that might not have happened over the last year to 18 months in terms of health and safety risk assessments, equipment, contributing towards the cost should get sorted out.
And going forward, where the buzzword is that we will all be hybrid working, some at home and some in the office, does that mean employers are going to have to provide equipment in 2 places and suitable assessments of workplaces in both areas as well?
Yeah, absolutely, quite possibly. I mean, in terms of the risk assessment, it's not too onerous, and a lot of it can be done by the employee themselves at home. You can kind of send them a questionnaire that they fill in, and then they flag up any issues. It's not that you have to walk into each of their houses and examine whether they're going to trip over a wire or something. Most employees at home working need to take a certain element of responsibility for their own work environment. But yeah, I think hybrid working raises all sorts of challenges. It's very easy if you've shut your office and allowed everyone to work from home. You've clearly saved money in the renting of that office, and you can use part of that money to set up all this great equipment and provide everyone with an office chair in their home. If you're still expecting them in 2 days a week, then potentially the costs are doubling if you have to provide double the equipment.
Thank you very much. Got another question here, which taking us back a little bit to the face mask issue, but also how you manage security. So I've got a person here who said, what do you suggest for a business where customers have to take their face masks off? Is that permitted? So clearly I've got somebody here with a photography shop. So if you have to ask people to take their masks off because you are, I don't know, shaving them, or you are taking a photograph, perhaps a photograph for a passport or for a family reason, are they allowed to take their face masks off? Who would like to come in on that one? Paul, I think this may again be you.
Hello. Yes. In those circumstances, yes, people are allowed to take their face masks off when they're in the business. Up till the time that they need to take it off, they have to wear the face mask. The example you've given is a person having a shave in the barbers. They would have to take their face mask off. When they're having a haircut, they have to keep the face mask on. A person sitting outdoors in a pub needs to go to the toilet. They're allowed to do that. As soon as they go indoors, they have to put the face mask on, and then when they come out, they take it off. Likewise, the photographers come in, do all the transactions with the face mask on. When it comes to the time of the photograph, take the face mask off. So it's as simple as that, just a dynamic risk assessment. Okay.
Thank you very much. Rubie, I've got one for you here, which is, do the shops still have a big line outside? Because obviously we still have some shoppers who are nervous about coming in and would love a bit of retail therapy. So what would you say to shoppers who are still nervous about coming back?
I think they need to know that town centre managers, enforcement officers, Paul's team have conducted really strict risk assessments with every single business, face-to-face, over the phone, online. So they have procedures when you're going into the shops where they know, shop owners know that they have to provide they have to make sure that their customers are wearing face masks, they've got antibacterial, antiviral gel, there's 2 metre spacing throughout the whole of the shop, so no one's kind of dominoed on top of each other. So in terms of the worry about catching the infection, I think it's mitigated by the steps that, as a team, Brent Council have actually put together. In terms of queues, I think apart from this first week with TK Maxx and Primark, where and usually the banks and building societies, which already have and have been continuing through all of lockdown, have the 2 metre spacing, I think that the general public can actually be they can be less concerned about catching the virus, because there are processes in place to prevent that now happening, as opposed to where we were last year.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to follow up now with actually a question that's come in from somebody whose name Number, who says that he's clearly a trainer and his business was predominantly face-to-face. He needs a lot of help to move his business onto the online service and offer that blended hybrid learning both to his learners and to their employees. Could somebody else help answer that one? Marta, I think this may be a good one for you to start with.
Yes, so let me see where the question is in the question and answer, right?
Yes, he is. He was a trainer.
Yeah, I see it.
Help to move his business. He cannot be the only one who is also struggling.
No, absolutely. It was one of the main kind of questions we always have received from the beginning since we started lockdown. The program is a program destined to companies who have not received kind of a lot of support before, or also companies who have started, recently, or again, the traditional businesses who now have to move to the online, as online providers. And in this case, as I said, we have not only the support from our advisors who deal specifically with that. We're developing a lot of webinars for digital, to increase your skills in digital issues. Recently, I was checking the dates just to help this company as well. But the first thing I would recommend this company is to contact one of the advisors that will tell them all the new dates for the specific webinars that we have around that. Let me see. We have just one recently about web optimization. Usually we repeat it every quarter. That's 2 days webinar that covers everything from really setting up your online kind of website, or even focusing online sales and other platforms that can help you with sales. So we cover everything that is available for the businesses. But the best thing they can do is really to contact one of our advisors. They will do a whole diagnostic and see all the needs from the company, because we cover everything from the business plan to model canvas to understand their target audience. Even if it's a company that wants to sell abroad, everything. So that, I think that would be the best I think they could do. And also I will take notes I'm taking notes of all the comments in order to design the next list of webinars for next quarter, because we are now in the process. So the webinars we have until June. Right now we have one interesting about raising finance. And I was checking if we have anything specific about digital or web optimization, but we don't, but I think we're going to repeat that one. So I guarantee this company will have some resources specific.
I'm sure you will continue to get requests for this kind of advice.
Yeah, yes, absolutely.
Yeah, there will be support out there, a range of support to help you get online.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going to go back to looking at our sort of local retail issue now. So over to you, Rubie. There's a really nice question here, which is who can I speak to in regards to being a supplier in assisting buy local high street reopening campaigns to provide our services to boost local retail, restaurants, bar and general town centre area footfall. So what more can be done, I suppose, by all of us? But Rubie, I'm going to ask you if you can answer this question first about trying to get that shopper confidence back and about encouraging people who have probably shopped locally more during the pandemic than they did previously when they went to the larger out of town places. People have relied more on their local suppliers. What can we do to keep that going?
Absolutely. So sort of more from a strategic point of view, within my team, there's an officer, Rosalind Flowers, who actually is doing a piece of work with our procurement team to actually make sure that local shops, suppliers, contracts are actually procured at a local level as opposed to going outside of the borough. So if you're interested in finding out more about that, then please let me know, because Ros is actually doing the work with procurement and our contracts team to ensure that information goes out to all local businesses so that they have a chance to actually pitch for some of the contracts that we have at Brent Council. In terms of making sure that we continue shopping local, because that's what has actually boosted the local economies. We're ensuring that businesses understand what the importance of how they have this relationship with their customers, because predominantly that's what it's all about. It's about developing the communities, but realizing that we need to revitalize the relationships that local people have with their local shops. And the way in which businesses have been doing that, and we have each year a Small Business Saturday award where we look at successful businesses and encourage businesses that have only come on that journey early on to work towards setting up processes that will help them do that. So we get them to understand where they fit in the market, what is unique about them, what is it about that business that stands them out from the crowd, from like the big multis or corporates. And as a town centre manager, it's my job to explore with that business and tease out what those unique properties actually are. Wembley is actually quite unique because on the demographics and ethnicities is really really exciting, and festivities and lots of events and occasions are celebrated. So we are constantly highlighting the joy in the community, and that's really important, because if local shops get behind local communities and celebrations, that they'll find that their tills will be ringing and they'll have loyal customers for a lot longer. Obviously, quite importantly as well is social media, and it could be any level of social media. Some businesses, as we found out, didn't even have emails. So as a town centre manager, I've been helping them to actually set up email accounts and emails, looking at Google search engines, encouraging businesses to look at Uber, Just Eat and Deliveroo, and actually looking at which platforms suit them best, because it's not all about, you know, having a platform where you can actually purchase and deliver. It might just be just having the recognition of actually knowing that your business is actually going to be in the top 10 search, the search engine optimizer, when you actually put your business name in. And obviously, special offers, discounts and coupons always work a treat. So advising businesses to look at rewarding customers, and actually start to collect emails and look at database marketing. So there's a whole combination of work that goes around shopping local. It's a complex subject, and it has lots of different levels. And as a town centre manager, I'll tease out and work out what is the best fit for that business. So it kind of, Joe, that's kind of where I'm at with this. It's a journey, and it's continuous, and it will never end. So that each of those platforms or different levels that businesses need to actually get recognised on are optimised to the level that they feel satisfied with in their delivery with that customer and that relationship.
Thank you, Rubie. I know it is difficult. It's one of the nice things actually about the pandemic has been the new players that have come into the market to make it easier for small companies to get out there and get to their customers in a more direct fashion. And I work in marketing, and I'm aware that it changes all the time. And I did a course recently, and all the new things that seem to have appeared just in the last 5 or 6 months. And those new routes to market and those new distribution methods, I think, will certainly help all our local shops reach their customers faster and more effectively. Got a couple of HR questions coming in now. So Jennie, I'm going to go over to you. It's a question from someone who's been on furlough. I just don't know their name, so I'm just going to call them key knitter, because they say they've run out of blankets to knit after having been furloughed for the whole pandemic. And they're not quite sure about the rules, which do seem to change. We have had a lot of amendments to furloughing. So are they allowed to get part-time work elsewhere? Can they volunteer anywhere? And please, what can they do before they go furlough crazy?
The simple answer is yes, they can get a part-time job. Yes, they could get a full-time job. Now, it's not even in the rules that has to be temporary. However, clearly, if you're taking on another permanent job and then your previous employer asks you to come back from furlough and potentially would give you 48 hours notice of that, you would then need to be resigning from that second job that you've got if the hours clash. So make sure that that new employer is aware that you have actually got this other job that you're furloughed, so that this is something that potentially will only be temporary and you might have to leave at short notice. The other thing to say is you need to check your contract of employment with your current employer. It may be that they've put certain restrictions in there. So although legally the government has said you can take a second job, it may be if that second job that you want is a local competitor of the company that you work for, it might be in your contract that you can't work for them. Your furlough letter might also have in it something about having to let your company know if you're taking on a job or temporary work or volunteering somewhere else. So it's worth checking that letter as well. But yes, absolutely, in terms of the law, you can take on a second job or volunteering as much as you like to give you something else to do rather than all the crafting at home.
Thank you very much. I've got a nice pertinent question here from someone, which is about the restart grants, which is how long is it going to take for the restart grants to roll out? And are there any tip-offs that there might be further grants and or support financially coming from local authorities after that? Paul, are you able to help with this one?
No, sorry, Joe. Hopefully Marta might be able to get better.
Those restart grants are eagerly awaited. I know that. They're called the Restart Recovery Grants, I think. Marta, you're on mute. Are you able to know when they're starting to bleed through those grants? I was aware that I saw information come out saying people could apply for them early. But
yeah, Joe, I don't mind jumping in on that. Shall I jump in, Joe, on that?
Yeah, okay. That would be great.
Yeah, no worries. So the restart grants were the applications for those are open on the Brent website. So businesses can go on and actually start applying as of now. So what I can do is I can send the link through for businesses that haven't actually seen that yet. In terms of payment, I know that I don't have a timescale from the rates department because they've been administered from the business rates section. So, but by all means, Brent have actually started the process, so businesses can actually start applying.
Brilliant, thank you very much. So if you could pop that in the chat as well, then people will be able to pick that up. So anyone who hasn't applied, who is eligible, can get their application in. Jennie, I'm going to come back to you now for a question about what you can do in an office. So I've got somebody here who is quite nervous because apparently they would like people to wear face masks in the office, and the colleagues are refusing, and the employer is not enforcing it. So what can this person do as an individual? Because they're clearly quite worried about their vulnerable clients.
Yeah, I mean, legally, there is no obligation for office workers to wear a face mask or for employers of office workers to ask or insist that employers in an office wear a face mask. So that's probably why you're coming up to objections. It's not something that your colleagues have been told by your employer that they have to do, and the employer may have a number of reasons why they don't want to ask them. I think to speak to your employer, put forward to them your concerns and why it is you feel that everybody around you should be wearing a face mask. It may be that may persuade them that they think it's a good idea, or it may be that they can find other ways to help you feel as safe as that would. So is it that you're surrounded by lots of people and you can be moved to a different area of the office where there's more social distancing possible, or that you're nearer to a window with better ventilation? There could be other options, because certainly your employer would not be able to force your colleagues to wear a face mask if it's an office environment.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got a question here, which I think is interesting. It's mostly about ventilation. Now, I actually am interested in this because there's been an awful lot of scientific reports coming out that ventilation is almost more important in terms of preventing spread of this of COVID than all the sanitisation that we are doing. And there was debate about whether it should be the number one priority in terms of what we are encouraging. Now, ventilation is obviously difficult with businesses. And you have the two problems. One, if you're a business with air conditioning, which tends to recirculate the air, what should you do about it? And secondly, this person is clearly running a small shop and would quite like to keep the front door open in order to improve ventilation for themselves and their customers, but are concerned it might be a security risk. Would anybody like to come in on that and help us with a bit of advice in terms of both what you do as an office with ventilation and in terms of any security risk that you feel that you might be experiencing perhaps in Brent if you keep your front door open. Rubie, would you like to come on this one? Is there a risk to people keeping their front door open?
Do you know what? This is Paul's probably best advised on this, as more health and safety wise. Paul, do you want to pick this one up?
Yes, okay, yeah, I'll give some input on it. Thank you. Obviously there are specific retailers where having the door open is a risk. For example, I can think of, in the context of Ealing Road, I can think of the jewellers who have double entry door systems and to prevent people obviously running in and stealing from them. General shops, hopefully that wouldn't be too much of a problem because they want to have free access in and out. In a retail environment, it's considered quite low risk in terms of the amount of time that people are in the premises. Obviously, you have lots of different people coming in, but hopefully each person who's actually in the shop is in there for a short time and is limiting their time in there. That's the idea is that people are supposed to be monitoring their own behavior as well, rather than just relying on the shops looking after them. You have to think, I'm going in here to get this, I'm going to go in and get it and leave, come out. You can also do things like have the sheeting that you see on counters, plasticized sheeting, barriers between yourself, and wear face masks to protect you. And you can also wear those wraparound covers which will protect you, so you have an element of protection as well. Carry on the regular cleaning and regular testing of staff, and making sure that people are your staff are signed in and doing regular testing. So that's one way of sort of trying to protect yourself in offices. And to answer your question, yes, having a free flow of air is one of the best ways of preventing COVID infection, because it blows it away apparently. In offices where there is no free flow, other mitigating steps have to be taken, such as making sure that people aren't sitting together, and that refers back to that one where the participant was asking about the face masks. Yes, you're not legally obliged to enforce people to wear face masks in an office, but if you don't have room for them to spread out more than 2 meters and you can't get a free flow of air through a place, then you'd have to consider that as an element of health and safety. Are you actually, how can I take steps to prevent people infecting each other? Well, then, yes, ask them to wear face masks. And that's your own health and safety thing, because you have that obligation to ensure that your staff are safe. And it's the same as not have an unguarded, hole in the floor. It's exactly the same thing. You have to take steps to manage that, whatever the specific regulations say. So yes, you can make people, if you think that's the situation, I'm not getting any free flow of air in here, I can't spread people apart, I can't make them work at home, they have to come in, so they have to wear face masks. And you see that in warehouses and other elements of places like that where they're enclosed. You have bubbles of people working together, and you don't share. One group can't share with another one, and you keep them separated from there, and particularly in use of canteens and one-way systems, and just trying to ensure that you're managing it. The great thing about that now is you can do the continuous testing, can't you? You can do testing every couple of days, the lateral flow testing, which people can apply for. They can get the kits, keep doing that. So that's a very good way of trying to make sure also that people aren't coming in to offices and workplaces who aren't going to spread the infection if they're asymptomatic. But with regard to the shops, you keep the front door open if you can, but if you have security problems, apply all the other elements, barriers, screen for you, face mask to protect the customers, and ensure that there is a free flow of people that are going in there, and that you're monitoring the numbers of people in the shops. Can I just, I'm aware I'm going on a bit.
But the question about, could you limit the number of people in the shop? Did you have the authority to do that?
You should do, yeah. You should do that, yeah. Great examples of that can be seen in the LDO, where they had enormous queues in the first week. but fantastic, which is great because that's outdoors. And if people are keeping 2 meters apart and you've got your back to the person in the queue, you're not breathing on you. That's great. And then when you go into the shop itself, it's nice and easy. It's a nice experience. You may have had to wait half an hour, but if you want to go into a retail environment, which is great, you're then comfortable. There is a thing, and you should be looking to see how can I limit the number of people in this shop and say, sorry, there's too many people now, don't come in. From there, it's hard to do. Once again, it's right wearing the face mask, but you do have that obligation to your staff to ensure that they're safe. Okay.
There you go. You have the authority to say no.
Yeah.
A lot of questions are coming in about funding, and I think it's particularly because a lot of the grants and that have been available so far have been based mainly for businesses that are ratepayers. So I've got a question to throw out here, which is, what is there available in terms of financial support for businesses that are not ratepayers? Would anyone like to come in on that one? Rubie, can you come in on this one?
Yeah, the government have had a non-ratepayers scheme, which is actually now closed. So unfortunately, if that business didn't apply for the ARG grant, which was to do with hardship, then they've missed the boat, I'm afraid. But the government have recognised that there's ratepayers and there should be grants for those businesses, and there are other businesses that aren't ratepayers and they could also apply. The Restart grant is only for ratepayers. So I don't know if this is this business. I don't know where this business is located, whether it's at Wembley and Ealing Road. If they don't mind contacting me, I can pick up a discussion with them on a one-to-one.
Thank you very much. I've got a bit of a follow-up question here, and something I hadn't appreciated, actually. What do I do if banks aren't offering business bank accounts at the moment? Someone's got a new business and they simply can't get a business bank account. They need somewhere to keep incoming money. Is he allowed to use a normal personal current account in the meantime? Quite a technical question there. So I don't know if you're a sole trader or a business, what are the rules around that? Do we have anyone online that can answer that? Or are we going to have to go away and do a bit of research? Somebody wave at me if you think you can answer it. We don't know the answer to that one. So I'm very sorry for that. We don't know the answer to that question, but we will see if we can get some advice out later about what the things are about, rules are around business bank accounts. This is a nice one for everybody, I think, which is I've got someone who says he and his brother run a small convenience store on Kenton Road. It's called A&P Essentials. So I've got one person who have promoted your business. Thank you very much to you. Well done. What advice or top tips would you give for this kind of business during unstable times as we exit lockdown? So what's the best advice you can give for a convenience store to just keep their customers who've probably been using them a little bit more during this time and to continue to expand? Rubie, this might be a good one for you to start with.
Yeah, of course. And obviously, I'm hoping that this business has actually built a relationship with local customers throughout the whole of the lockdown period. So it's possible that this business might be able to offer a loyalty program. So where they might, if they purchase something, they get a coffee or they get a tea or they get something inexpensive, which will keep the customer coming back. A simple way of actually making sure that those customers are rewarded. It might be they get 10% off their purchase if they're regular customers. It might be that they've bought into some sort of environmental sustainability causes, i.e. they've stopped using plastic bags, they're more eco-friendly, and whether this business has actually joined a local business association that actually is looking at sort of more the strategically across all the businesses that might be in that location. It always helps to look at critical mass when it comes to doing any kind of loyalty program. So there's kind of a host of different activities that business can actually adopt in order to maintain the business, the relationship with the customers going forward.
Thank you very much. I've got a couple of attendees online who'd like to put their questions to you live, which would be fantastic. So Christine Coke, I can see you're there and you're waiting. I've said that you can talk. I'm afraid we won't be able to see you, but we will be able to hear you. So if you come off mute, I'm hoping that you will be able to put your question live to us.
Well, it wasn't a question, it was basically an answer to the person regarding a bank account.
Brilliant.
In business, have an accountant, and an accountant could advise you on this one regarding a bank account.
Thank you very much for that, Christine. That's very helpful. I see I've got Cheryl Tudor also out there. Cheryl, would you like to come online if I allow you to come on?
Yes, thanks. Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay. I use Starling Bank and Tide. They're for businesses, they're online, and they're really easy to deal with. I think Starling is the better one. They set up your bank account, you give them your ID, you must be registered with Companies House. As far as I know, you just send your ID in and they'll approve it at some point in time. I think they're setting up new services where they have, invoicing. So it's a choice between that, and then you can link it to things like Square for payments and SumUp, and just see how it goes from there.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you very much for coming in and being able to supply the answer to that question for our attendee today. Just as we go on forward, I'm just going to ask a little question that goes round everybody on our panel today. I'm not quite sure whether someone's going to also run a poll as well, because we were going to run some regular polls during these webinars to track what's going on. So if you see a poll pop up, please answer it. And while that's taking place, I'm going to just pop round and I'm going to ask each of our panelists now, if they got the chance to have Boris and Rishi in a room, what would be their big ask going forward to help support their clients and the businesses in Brent? So, Paul, I'm going to start with you because you happen to be top left on my screen and that helps me keep track of who I'm talking to. So if you had Boris and Rishi in front of you, what would you ask for?
Thanks, Joe. Yeah, although the response of government has been great in terms of responding to legislation, it would be good to have received more input and to have more advice from people on the ground, and it would be ideally from businesses as well, more input in terms of the regulations that have to be put in. They are emergency regulations and they are health protection ones, and they were drawn up very quickly, but it would be nice to have more input from enforcers on the ground. Okay.
Thank you very much. Jennie, can I go to you next? What would be your ask?
Yeah, I think mine would be statutory sick pay related. So our rate of statutory sick pay in this country is fundamentally lower than an awful lot of European countries. Considering the statistics on how many people who had symptoms failed to isolate for the required period of time, and being financially unable to do so being a big reason for that. I think an awful lot of employees would have hidden the fact that they'd had a positive test or that they'd got some symptoms and carried on going to work just because they couldn't afford not to. Why they didn't increase the rate of statutory sick pay specifically for COVID-related illness, I think that would have made a huge difference to stopping the spread.
Thank you. As a question, follow-up question for me, really, because we changed our sickness pay policy when the pandemic started to treat all our newcomers as if they were as if they'd been with us for 6 months, because that way they were entitled to full sick pay for 2 weeks. Is it still the case that from a sort of legal perspective, anyone who joined wouldn't be entitled under normal circumstances to sick pay unless their company has a company sick pay policy?
Yeah, so statutory sick pay only kicks on a fourth day of absence normally. They did change that, so for COVID-related sickness, statutory is kicked in on the first day, but it's such a small amount compared to the average salary that it is still a huge pay deduction for most people if they want statutory sick pay for 2 weeks and their company didn't have a enhanced company sick pay scheme. Yeah, I've certainly heard of a number of companies that decided it would be the right thing to do, the safe thing to do, to encourage their employees to stay at home by providing that sick pay for them. But of course, a lot of companies were in such difficult financial situations they weren't able to do that.
To be honest, I didn't want sick staff in the office because that was a whole different problem. But that was simply, I think a lot of companies did make that decision at the time, and I think I'm disappointed, I guess, that it wasn't enforced by legislation.
Absolutely.
A lot of European countries certainly did better in terms of enabling people to isolate and take time off work.
absolutely.
Marta, I'm going to come to you next. If you had Boris and Rishi in a room, what would be your big ask?
Well, I've been analyzing the data we've got since the COVID started and all the companies we have helped. And one of the main problems I think we've noticed is sole traders. And sole traders should have kind of more dedicated grants for them, because we have felt that they fall through the cracks in some of the other schemes. And obviously they're starting to get desperate if they're trying to apply, they're not eligible for one, for other, and the rest. So I think they should have more dedicated grants really for them. I could tell you of the more than 2,000 companies we have supported and more than 3,000 phone calls we have received, 89% are sole traders. So it's huge, and I don't know if it's the general kind of percentage and it applies to general kind of numbers, or it's just the ones that come to us, or they're more desperate. So I know they've been through a lot, and a lot of stops and starts and lockdowns and coming out of lockdowns and going back to lockdowns again. So there are certain companies that really need sole traders that really need urgent support and kind of I guess reduce the requirements of eligibility.
Thank you very much. Finally, Rubie, can I turn to you? You've got Boris, you've got Rishi. They're going to listen to you. What would you ask?
Which I hope they do. Right, so I probably have two asks. The one that I would immediately think of, which will help households and businesses, is to have super fast fibre optics and pre-broadband for everybody in Brent, so the connectivity is like really efficient. That would be like my first pitch. There's a lot of areas that have really bad connectivities, both residents and businesses. So I'd really like to get more connected and on a digital platform. But sort of more strategically, I think plastic is the enemy, and discarded plastic fishing nets and bags, which are ruining our oceans, is absolutely critical. So I would say, the banning of discarded plastic fishing nets, which are actually killing all our whales, dolphins and sharks. Because if we don't have, it's all very well us talking about the economy. If we don't have a planet, everything kind of becomes quite meaningless. So we need to put climate change at the top of the agenda.
Thank you very much, Rubie. So that's it. We need to save our planet and save our local shops. Paul, did you want to come in? Because we're running out of time. Is there something you wish to add?
Yeah, just a quick one, Joe. Thank you. It's about that person who raised the disabled access query. Will that be passed on to us? I haven't seen it come up or anything like that. So if they can pass their details through, and it can be passed on to me. Thank you.
Yeah, so shout out to you out there. If you want to pop your details through to us, we can pass them on, or even if you're able to put them in the chat at a private message, we will be able to pass that on and get that dealt with. We're coming to the end of today's webinar, which is a great shame. And I've seen some questions just come in at the last minute, and we're not going to have time to answer them all, which is an enormous shame, but they will all go forward, and we will do our best to get back to everybody with the answers to their questions, or at least be able to point you to the help and support that's available for you. This is just the first in a series of webinars, so I understand that a link will be coming up in the chat shortly in order to help you register for the next one and be able to keep your questions coming. So thank you once again to all our panelists today for answering all the questions, and thank you to our delegates, in particular those delegates who actually helped us answer some of the questions. So we have a nice support network going here, and we have a fantastic manifesto for Brent to put to the government next time we get the chance, in terms of saving our local economy as well as the planet. So thank you all very much, and we look forward to seeing you at the next webinar. Goodbye, everyone.